panels, two panel subscriptions which we have. But we were also thinking that some of the people from the 82nd or 81st batch or so could also be having some papers left in the semester two. So we have tried to schedule it in this manner that the compulsory paper of, uh, semester three, which is training analytics, is going to be scheduled largely at 6 o'clock in the evening, which will not have any clash with the semester two courses. However, the optional courses, which is OD and change management, and the other one is, talent management. They have been kept at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So that's the sort of, so maybe for a very minuscule set of people, there might be a question of making a choice between the optional paper vis-a-vis the semester two paper. Otherwise, things should work out quite well for all of you, right? So, to introduce Mr. Swadesh Chakravarti, he is a veteran. In fact, for about 5 or 6 years, you have been a regular faculty with us. Of course, he is a member of ISTD also, but apart from that, he has been a regular faculty with us, and he has been a very dependable and reliable and very popular sort of, faculty. This time, he is going to be conducting the sessions on managing training process, which is like the role and responsibility of some of the L&D managers is that they have to overall look at how the entire L&D function is being managed, right? So this is a little more on administrative type of approach or so, or the process to manage the entire training process. Now, we are not getting into too much of managing of a training center or training institution as such, but there are aspects of that also which are going to be included in that, right? Ms. Chakravarti has a long years of experience. Initial part of his experiences have been in banking sector. He rose to a very high level in the State Bank of India, and also he had inclination of giving the training there also. But then now he is for last a decade or so more into training, and in fact he is apart from. I mean, so much so that he is more of a train the trainer, and also in so many soft skills area, and I think banking is like an older chapter for him. Is that so, Mr. Chakravarti?
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Okay. So with this brief introduction, I would request Mr. Chakravarti to go ahead and conduct the sessions. I thank you for having agreed to take these sessions, and we look forward to your great contribution to this ISTD Delhi chapter's diploma activities. So thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaushal. It's nice, so nice of you to give me such compliments. It is all your efforts that you are doing it so nicely. They're conducting this program to see the convenience of the students and the faculties also. Well, I welcome you, all my students, and today's online session on managing training process. And it is your paper 8 in semester 2 of the diploma program. It's an important paper. I mean, all the papers are important, but this is a paper which you give a bird's eye view of how the training process goes on in any organization. And as in the responsibility in any of your, as in the training department, you have to look through these things in a nutshell, that how the training process will go on in the organization, what you need to do, and what's your responsibility towards that. To start with, we must know the relevance of these topics and its relationship with other sessions in the program, because you have to look at it in its entirety. So you have to understand how this paper is connected with other papers. Today, the organizations are functioning within a highly competitive environment, as you understand and all of you know. It needs to achieve its goals, and at the same time, it's required to face the threats arising out of the environment. Organizations are facing the threats and competitions from the environment. It has to face it. And if you're working in any organization as a person in the training department or HR department, you have to look and have to understand about it, because the strategy of the organization is also connected to the human resource strategy and training process. Apart from all its resources. I mean, since the organization has to grow, organizations to meet up with the competitions and the threats from around, it has to depend upon its resources. And out of those resources, the most important resource that we must understand and realize that the most important resource is the human resource. It is only that by using that, exploiting that human resource, any organization can make it, either it is a successful organization or it becomes a failure. It will depend much on that. So uh, let us first understand that where the need for training initiates in any organization. All of you know, but still you have to pinpoint this thing again and again, because so that you cannot miss the target, you cannot miss our goal, miss our objective. That why do you give training? What is the need for training in the organization? Now, as you know, that every organization to grow with, every organization to achieve excellence in its life, in its organizational life, it has to meet some of its performance. So there is some expected organizational performance. We call it as EOP, or expected organizational performance. But whatever be the expected organizational performance, there are certain actual, real organizational performance. If there is a gap, if there is a gap between this expected organizational performance and actual organizational performance, then there is a need for training. It immediately it immediately triggers a need for the felt by the executives of the organization, that organization needs now the intervention of training, so that the human resource that we are using and exploiting to develop the organization, to grow the organization, needs some change. And there comes the need for training for developing them. So training is a tool to fill this gap. You need to understand that. So training is a part of this whole human resource, the organizational strategy. To meet up with the organizational strategies, we need to use training as a tool. So it is a tool for meeting this gap between the expected performance, the performance gap, organizational performance, and the actual organizational performance. The question of initiating and managing this training process initiates here, because since we understand that it is only the human resource, developed human resource, can fulfill that gap, can complete that gap. So therefore, the training has to be started. The training is a tool for that. So there comes the need for training. When we think of needs for the training, now how the training is to be seen in the organizational level, let us see that. Now I will start with some of my the PowerPoint presentation, so that you can step by step what I'm going to do.
ના પ્રેક્ટિસ નહીં આપણે છે ને ઓલું ક્રિયા કરી ને
Hello,
ઊભા થયા
hello.
ને તો હવે તું
I
સેટલ
think there is
યોરસેલ્ફ
some disturbance, please. There is some disturbance, please.
ચલો હા બેસીને હું કરાવી
Please mute yourself. There is some disturbance. Although I don't know why this is not being removed from here. Let me just do it once more. Share screen. Well, let me start. This window is not going into that view mode. It will come up. Now, do you understand this managing training process? The managing training process, we can follow. There is an ADDIE model, which you may have already read about, that we can, it follows the ADDIE model. But before that, as I told you earlier, that the need for this man training comes only when there is an expected organizational performance is uh, minus the actual organizational performance that is being really practically the results are. Then there is a gap in the organizational performance. That's what we call as organizational performance gap. And if that is so, then there is a process of entire the training process is to be initiated. And in that training process, there is a need for training the training process. And we see from the ADDIE model, so there are 5 stages, 5 phases of ADDIE model for this training process to start with. Well, how this comes, let us first see the first need the step phase is the needs analysis phase. And I must tell you here that for different phases, you have got different chapters, which will be, or either you have already started, you're going to start today, or you have already started in your, you have already done it in your first semester. So the first thing is the needs analysis phase, that the you need to understand, analyze that what is the extent of need of training. The need of training is understood when there is a gap, but then you have to quantify it, or you have to specifically understand that where lies the need. What are the areas, what are the departments, what are the branches, what are the respective areas where there is a need for training, and that has to be analyzed, and that has to be pinpointed, so that we can make a one can make a planning for that, how to give this. So the next step comes the designing, that the design phase. The design phase is that phase where who, why, this is need to be done, who is going to make this, take this, make this training, what are the objectives of the training that you are going to, going to initiate, with what results expected, what are the methods that you will adopt, when you are going to do this training program, where you are going to do this training program, what are the contents of this training program. Everything has to be decided there, and what will be the delivery of that program, and what are the materials that will be used. It's design, it's the planning for that, and how we're going to do that. Now, identifying all the priorities to the training needs. What are the priorities to the training needs? And what kind of priority will give to the training needs? Because there may be training needs for a very specific, very important, very emergent, emerging needs, or there may be various kinds of needs. So we have to see that what priority that I give to a particular program. There may be a very short-term program of a very important, very on a very important topics, and everyone is to be given that training program. There may be training program which is not to be given to everyone, and that is not also in an, we're not to do it in a very in an emergency level. We can do it later on, we can wait for that. So you have to think about what is the priority level. The very important thing out of that is that what we are going to do is design this program, how this particular training program is aligned with our business strategy. And as I told you earlier, a training cannot be seen in isolation. Training has got no importance in isolation. Training is important only when we are going to connect it with the organizational, the strategy, when the business strategy. That's what we are going to achieve through, through a business. How training is going to become instrumental in developing the human resource, so that you can really achieve that goal of that business goal from the organization. That should we look out. We cannot see, it's not a ceremonial process of doing a training program. The training program is going to be done actually for developing the human resource, who is ultimately going to help the organization to achieve its business goals. So that is that aligning with the business strategy is very, very important. And therefore, the objective has to be very clear. Identify the training objective, that who is going to be trained, who is going to be trained, and who is going to be trained is backed by the the point that where is the gap, and why there is a gap, why there is a need. So who is going to be trained and how he is going to be trained. How he's going to be trained is also a very important thing, depending upon what we are expecting from him as a result of this training. So how we are going to be, he's going to be trained, and what is the outcome that we're expecting. I mean, what we want, what kind of change that you're expecting from these people after going through the training program, quantitatively and qualitatively. Both the things are required to be seen. So, a design phase will see that. And the next phase, the development phase. The development phase is whatever you have planned in this stage, in the design phase, now you have to develop that. You have to make it into reality. You have to do it in the practicality, the development phase. And development phase is the formulating that entire process of this instructional strategy, how we're going to go about this entire thing to achieve the training objective that we want to achieve, how we're going to make it a reality, and that is the development phase. And remember, this particular topic that you're going to do, managing training process, will give more stress on this development and implemental phase of this training process, because the design phase you may have seen earlier or you will see, and the needs analysis phase also you have seen. So this is necessarily, we are dealing with the developmental phase, the development and implementation phase. So after development phase, as I told you, development phase is that phase where whatever you have planned in our design phase, now we are going to transfer it into reality. I mean, what are the things need to be done that you will see later on, and how we are going to transfer it into reality, and ultimately the implementation phase, how we are going to implement it. So for that, we may have to do some dry run or do some pilot program, make an experiment. You can see the results, make an evaluation, and everything. So at the development and then the implementation phase. And then after the implementation phase, there is an evaluation phase, because for every management process, there is an evaluation phase, the control function of management, as you know, that evaluation phase, where you have to evaluate that whatever we have done so far, is it right? Are you really going towards the objective that you want to achieve? Are you really going to achieve it? So for that, we need to make the evaluation. And evaluation, you will see that it is divided into two parts: the process evaluation and the outcome evaluation. And you understand that the process is perfect, process is good, outcome is bound to come. So we have to see the process. That are you following the process that is really desired to achieve the objective, and then the outcome evaluation. That whatever you have thought of, whatever you have planned, whatever you have thought as a result that you want to achieve in this process, are we achieved it? That evaluation of the outcome. So there's all these five phases, systematic five phases through which a training process is to be managed. So for that, this entire thing has been given as an ADDIE model, because needs analysis A, design B, development D, implementation I, evaluation E. So ADDIE model is there. Now we are going to see that how really going to see the particular topic that we are going to deal with is the development and implementation phase. So in the development phase, how we're going to go ahead right now, let us see. The developmental phase, as I told you, it is the phase, again, I remind you, it is the phase of the design phase. In the design phase, all things theoretically, what the plans theoretically, what you are really going to do, keeping in your objectives from the training program, how we are going to achieve it, how, where, whom, everything is to be seen there. And now the reality, the development phase is the reality. And for getting the developmental phase, entering into the development phase, the first thing is that you have to see that since it is also a process, that what is the input? It is also a systemic process. So what are the inputs? The inputs, I mean, will be determining the factor that facilitate learning and transfer. Learning and transfer means if we want to really achieve this training objective, we have to make this training process on what are the inputs required. That means what are the things, that factors that will facilitate this learning and transferring process. Because training is a learning and transfer process. The knowledge has to be transferred, the learning has to be transferred to the people, to the training. What are the methods, alternative instructional methods that you can use by which you can really achieve our objective? And the process is seen in the instructional strategy. What things we are really specifically, what things we are going to do. And that is very interesting, and you will see it a little later. What are the things actually we are going to do in that entire training process when we practically implement it? And the third is the Third phase is the part of this phase is the output, the program development plan. That is, the instructor strategy will dictate or determine or define what are the things needs to be done. Now, in the output is the development, that what we are actually doing right now. So we have to develop some instructional material for doing the training program. We have to develop some instructional and the instructional equipment. So to achieve it, acquire it, develop it, whatever is required, some instructional equipment, so that you can really make the training program on. How we are going to take the trainees, see the trainees, how we are going to influence the trainees, how we're going to see that how the training is going to be ended, the training material that's required. Yes, please, Mr. Rohit, you got to ask anything? Hello, hello. Anyway, so training and training materials. What are the materials that's required to conduct the training program? What are the facilities that is required? So whatever we may have seen theoretically, to make it reality, there are certain facilities like a classroom is required, the tables and chairs are required, and the LCD projectors are required. So many things are required. The facilities are required, the lunch facility or the in between water facility, and so many other things are required. Then there is a need for the trainer who is going to train the people, keeping in view our objective that you want to achieve, and the kind of training program and the kind of the type of the subject that you're going to do, the kind of impact that you want to create in the minds of the trainees, what kind of trainers are required. These are the outputs, and which are very, very important in the development phase, because development phase will actually take us to that the realistic results that we're expecting in the design phase, right? So the development and implementation phase of training. And the next point is that you can see it diagrammatically. The development phase, the inputs are the determining the factors that facilitate learning and transfer, the learning and to happen, that learning and transfer to happen of training, learning and transfer of training to happen. What are the factors that is required and to facilitate this process? So we have to see, and those factors we have seen, and then the process, the instructional strategy, how it is going, what are the methods that you're going to use, and what are the elements that you're going to take into account while conducting this training process. And then the output that you have seen already, the program development plan, instructional material, instructional equipment, the trainee and the trainer's manual, the facilities, the trainers, and all and other things, everything is required as an output, but that will be the result in this process. This is the result. Understand it. Understand why this is a result. Because we are developing the training material, we are developing the trainers, we are developing the facilities, and then you will implement that to make the training program happen. To make the training program happen, in the design phase, we have made the theoretical understanding of the plan. And in the development phase, we are going to develop those inputs that is required to make that process on. So that those inputs will become the output of this development phase, which will be used to implement the training. So there will be requirement of instructional material, which is an output of the development phase, which is going to help the training process, the instructional equipment, the training, the trainer, the facilities that's required, and everything is required. That is the output of the development phase. And all and every output of the development phase will become the input for the implementation phase. Okay, so that we can see later on. So input, whatever input we are going to give in this developmental phase will depend upon certain factors. Inputs in the sense, what we have seen earlier, the inputs are what? The what kind of training material is required, the what kind of trainer is required, right? So what kind of facilities that is required, but that will depend upon the target group, certain factors that you need to understand. So the moment you think of doing a training, conducting training program, and you think of this development phase, you have to see that who are the target group. So even when you are looking at the target group of the senior executives, the kind of facilities or the kind of training, the training input will be a little different than the other people. What are the topics? Again, the topics will again depend upon what kind of people we're doing it. The senior level, junior level, operational level, theoretical level, strategic level, what kind of people we are. Because in the management also, there are the strategic level, the operational level, right? At the tactical level, the tactical level is the middle level management, the operational level, the lower level management, and all these levels, at all these different levels, there will be different kinds of input that is required depending upon their requirement. What will be the subject matter? That again, you will also again depend upon the input will depend upon what kind of subject matter. Either it is subject matter which is highly technical, or this is the subject matter which is simply theoretical. What kind of thing is it? What are the expected outcome? Again, that is also a very important factor to decide our input. What is the expected outcome? What you're expecting from this program? So out of this, um, we a combination of all these things, combination of all these things, depending upon the target group, the topic, the subject matter, the expected outcome, will make different instructional methods. Will develop that, and that will ensure a outcome. So if we are having a particular kind of target group, we'll think of that what kind of training is required, what kind of material is required, what kind of trainer is required, what kind of facility is required, and that is a set of instructional methods for that particular program, particular training program. So, and to the outcome is when you talk of this outcome, means what we are expecting from the people to get developed within them in terms of their cases, means what knowledge that you're expecting them to achieve after this training program, what are the skills that you're expecting those people to get out of this program, what are the aptitude that your attitude that you want the people to have to develop after this training program, what are the cases that you're expecting, that is the output. Well, the process is what the instruction strategy. That's again, I'm telling you that this particular topic is the development process, and here instruction strategy is a very important important aspect of this entire program, this entire subject, the top instructional strategy. What strategy you are adopting? Strategy in terms of the material that you want to have, the trainer that you want to have, the kind of training, the methods that you want to we want to implement in the training process. The whole set of things is the instructional strategy. Listing of all the elements of the training program. That includes the modules, individual modules. That you want to give this training program, what are the modules? What are the content of the modules? What are the details of the modules? What you're going to include into that? Their organization means how you're going to organize them, how to connect those topics, those modules with each other so that to achieve the desired objective. What are the timing of each and every session and the topics to achieve their objective? What are the methods that you're going to use? What materials you're going to use? And that entire thing is the sum total of all these things together is the instructional strategy, which is a very important instructional strategy. You understand, it is also known as a training plan, and it's a very important aspect of this developmental phase. And in the output, what we're achieving is that whatever we have decided by now, we have written it, we have thought about it, now we are coming reality, see into reality, the materials are developed, the instructional equipments are achieved, they're ready, they're positioned where they should be, the trainers are ready, the trainees are ready, the trainer and training materials are ready, the facilities are okay, and everything is fine. Now the implementation has to start. So developmental phase will come on up to this point of output, what we're going to achieve. And then next, as I told you, the instructional strategy is the most important part of this process, because instructional strategy is the most important essence of this developmental phase, this phase. It's a listing of, let us see what are the components of it. It's a listing of all the elements of training. As I told you earlier, it includes the individual modules, the organization connecting with each other, the timing, the methods and materials to be used, and the whole thing is together is known as the instructional strategy. It's a written document and also called a training plan. That means what? If you want to implement or start a training program, you have to first see all these things. You have to make a strategy on this aspect. What are the modules of this training program? What are the timings of this training program? What are the methods of the training program? What materials are going to be used in the training program? And depending upon who is the target group, what is the importance of the target group? What kind of goal that you want to objective? What is our objective out of this training program? Keeping in view that you have to make a plan, a training plan, and that is our instructional strategy. It's a written document. It is the first step of the developmental process. It is an input to the development. It's the process. It's the initial thing of the developmental process, because ultimately we'll achieve certain things. Focus of the instructional strategy is achieving the training objectives, of course. Instruction strategy is the achieving the training objective. that were created in design phase. In the design phase, we have started something, we have desired something to happen, and that's happening in the training objective. So instead of the design phase, there was a theoretical thinking of the planning of that thing, and here we will achieve in the instructional strategy is that's how we are going to achieve those things. Instructional strategy will formulate those things. Output of this developmental phase are the inputs of the implementation phase. As I told you again, I am making it very clear. To start with in the analysis and needs analysis phase, then there is a design phase. So when the need is decided and the design is made, a blueprint is made, then there comes the developmental phase. A development phase. The developmental phase will make a strategy of what elements are required, things are required to make this happen, make that training program happen. So they'll develop this thing. They'll develop the study material. They'll develop the trainers. They'll develop the create the facilities. So the methods and everything will be decided. And those things are going to then implement the input for the implementation phase. So then the implementation will start, and that is the next stage. So developmental phase of training, if you can see it from in a diagrammatically, the first step is formulating the instructional strategy. That's what you're going to do in the beginning, which will include alternative instructional methods, all other factors that are related to learning and facilitating and transfer, and to shape this, to get the strategy and achieve the objectives, right? So developmental phase will have all these things as we have already talked about. Now let us see the instructional methods. Now, see these components that we are going to add in this, to include in our this instructional strategy. What are the elements that we will discuss one by one? Choosing the instructional methods. The instructional methods will depend upon that the the various things that you want to achieve in terms of our objective from the training. So, as you understand, the instructional methods will depend upon what kind of knowledge, what kind of skill, what kind of attitude we're expecting from the people. That the cases we are expecting from the people. And in the cases, in the knowledge, there may be three kinds of expectations. The knowledge. One is declarative knowledge, the procedural knowledge, and the strategic knowledge. All these three kinds of knowledge may be required to be given to the trainees, whatever we give. The skills, in terms of when you talk of the skills, there will be two kinds of skills that may be required: the technical skill and the interpersonal skill. And the third is the attitude. For all people, that is the same. So we'll see now one by one how this is relevant. I mean, what are the details of this entire thing? Well, it's talking of this choosing these instructional methods, as I told you earlier, the one component is knowledge, other component is skill, and the third component is attitude. And that knowledge will comprise of three kinds of knowledge that can be given: the declarative knowledge, the procedural knowledge, and the strategic knowledge. Well, the declarative knowledge, the procedural knowledge, and strategic knowledge. The declarative knowledge is means what? Declarative knowledge means that it stores the factual information about a subject. Only the factual information, verifiable blocks of information that is delivered to the people, then must be given to the training, right? It may also include the legal requirement that is required to accomplish certain things, to implement certain things, the procedures to be followed, the definitions for the understanding the concept of that particular thing, right? All these things are simply declarative, and this is not going to do anything more than just storing that information in the minds of the trainee. Uh, and the trainees should be able to recognize these blocks of information whenever needed to analyze, to think, right, or to use. They should be able to use those information. So these are only declarative. That is not going to do anything more than that. And that is a very important aspect of any knowledge, because if you want to take a decision, if you want to implement certain thing, you have to take some action, you refer to the knowledge, the information of the knowledge, and how it is to be done. That's a declarative thing stored in your mind, right? I mean the definition about it, what the legal requirement that's required, and that you have to refer to as a training. And then there comes the procedural information. Procedural information, how to apply those facts, the facts that have been, I mean, stored in the within the mind uh, as an information, as a declarative information. It's not merely storing that information. If you really want to become, you want to do something in the real world, you have to apply those. And to know how to apply those, you must know how to apply a certain fact or certain information. So understanding that how to apply certain facts is what is known as the procedural knowledge. So you have to give that knowledge about the procedural aspects of using those facts, those information in the real world, in the practical world, and that's your procedural information. And then there comes the strategic knowledge. Strategic knowledge means what? It's a need for when you, because when you implement certain things or you do it something procedurally, it is backed by certain planning. Because first we have to make a plan that why there is a need for doing something, and if there is a need for doing something, why there is a need for doing something, and what will be the structure that is what you're going to do, what will be the blueprint of that what you're going to do, what action that you're going to take, and that blueprint is the planning, how to monitor the goal directed activities are to be monitored so that we can revise them as and when needed. We have developed them, we can change them as and when required. I mean, that is what is known as the strategic part of the knowledge, and it's more of the learning how to learn. And you must know that how to learn. A trainee must be know that how to learn certain, because he has to learn to implement certain things, and how to learn, that is a strategic process. So that strategic part, to achieve that strategy, I mean, that develop that understanding of how to make the strategy, there is some knowledge required. How to make planning, how to monitor, how to influence the goal-directed activity, how to learn the thing. That is a strategic knowledge. So you see that in instructional methods that you're going to use will involve that including that knowledge, and that knowledge will be three kind: declarative, procedural, and strategy. Well, next part of this scene after this knowledge. Yes, Soma, did you have anything to ask me?
Yes, sir. In the previous slide,
Yeah,
where you were mentioning a few things about procedural and strategic,
yeah.
so could you please elaborate, like there is something like procedural, and it is saying that how and where to apply the facts learned, and again the strategic part is also saying that how to learn or learning how to learn. So I'm not getting a
Yeah,
clear
I'm
idea
telling.
between
Yeah,
any
yes.
difference, or like
I'm,
strategic is means more about.
I'm telling. I'm telling. Yeah, please. The procedural is when you, the first thing, then for doing any action, taking any action, the first thing is making a planning, right? The making a planning means the
That's
moment you say you make a plan means how to do this thing, what things are needed to be done, and then how to do that. That is the two things that you see in a strategy. Why to do to something, what is the need for doing something, which things are required to be done, which things are required to be done, and why it's required to be done, right? And how it is required to be done, that we see in the strategy. The moment you see that, that means what, you require some knowledge as to understand how to make that planning. That it means relating the needs, understanding the needs, and implementing those needs. I mean, to bring those things in reality, to make a plan. That is our strategy, whether it's a short-term planning or it's a long-term planning, whatever it is. And again, also
Mhm.
why I'm calling it strategy, learning. If you want to learn something, to implement something, to take some action, you have to learn something. How we're going to learn, that is also our strategy. How we are going to achieve it. But the
Hmm.
procedure is when you are really now actually going to do that and take any action, what will be the process? Now, say for
Step
example,
by step, you mean?
say for example, we have decided that in my organization, the people should know about IT. They should be IT conversants. They should be able to work in the in a computer, they should be able to run the Excel sheets and word processing packages. That's our plan. Yes, we have made a strategy. Now we are going to make these people learn this thing that is required. So then we have decided if we want to make them learn how they are going to learn, what will be the process of learning. That also we have decided. Now, a particular thing that you want to understand in an Excel sheet, there is a procedure. How to apply that, that is our procedure. So there will be a procedural understanding. So first set of thing will be done by the at the strategic level, the strategic management level. The second thing is the procedural is in the tactical level people who are really going to think about that how I'm going to administer this, and then at the operational level that will be carried out. Exactly. Could you get some of my points?
Yes, sir, completely.
Okay.
Sir, hello.
Hello, please come up.
Yeah, can you elaborate this revised goal directed activities?
Once again, I could not listen to you.
Can you elaborate revising goal directed activity?
Goal directed activity. Uh, although I think within after one or two slides we'll have the question session. But anyway,
Okay, no problem. No problem.
but still, I'll tell you right now. Goal directed activity. A goal directed activity means what? I mean, a strategy is not something which is static. Say we are making a strategy at the beginning of the year that what we are going to do this year, right? Well, that's our strategy, what we are going to make a plan. And it for that, making that plan, we have got a goal, a fixed goal. And to achieve that goal, what we need to do. But then never a goal or any action that we take is static or a strategy is static. When we talk of any strategy, we think about what we have done earlier and whether it was successful or it is a failure. When you see that earlier steps taken to achieve a particular goal, to achieve a particular objective that you wanted to achieve, what things went wrong. So if certain things went wrong, we will revise that. Are you getting my point? A planning is not merely making a new plan. A planning is also to revise a earlier plan. So it's a revised goal directed activity. Are you getting my point? Suppose today I want to run a 100 meters race and I'm doing it for the first time. So I'll make a plan how I'm going to run. And that is my first plan. But the next time, what I'll do, I will see if I
Right,
was not successful, what went wrong. So that will be revising of my goal directed activity. That in what way I should have,
right, right,
what should have been
right.
done. So it's a revised goal directed activity. It means what? While making a strategy, it's not a static process. It's making a planning and it's revising certain planning which you have already done. Are you getting my point?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, sir. Very clear.
Thank you. Nice. Next, let us see. We require certain skills, knowledge, skills, attitude. Skills, and the skills, there are two important skills. The technical skill, as you understand, that to run anything, to do anything, to any technical activity, what kind of skills that is required for that, you need to give the trainings to them. Well, but that's not all. And even if somebody is highly technical in his subject, in his technically skilled person, will require other people to work with him as a team. So there is a requirement of interpersonal skill. You may be a very good engineer, a very good technical person. You understand many things about technology, and you are a very skilled person, but you cannot do it alone. You require a group of people to come and work with you so that you can really achieve the objective that you the responsibilities that you have to comply with. So there is a need for understanding having that interpersonal skill, that how we are really going to make a team, how we're going to manage people, how to develop relationship with other people. So as a whole, as a team, you can really achieve that goal what you want to achieve, and that is what is the skills input, and that is also part of the knowledge. And the third is the very important thing, but it is most of the people do not really do not think about it. I take it very casually, but the most important thing, you may have all kinds of knowledge and information, you may have all kinds of skills, but ultimately who is going to do that? The person is going to do that is inner engine, His attitude is not there. He is in a negative attitude. He doesn't think that he is going to be benefited by doing this, or he is not interested in doing this. He doesn't find anything good in doing this activity, then he will not do it. So it's the attitude that's the most important thing, that you have to give certain inputs in terms to develop or change the attitude of the people whom we are giving the training. So for that, to changing that attitude, we require to give the beliefs and opinions that, that supports or inhibits certain behavior, that supports the positive behaviors, and that inhibits the negative behavior. So the beliefs and opinion, because our attitude also depends upon our beliefs and our opinions, and the beliefs and opinions are developed out of the experiences of a life that you see. So to give some extra input uh, that supports the good behavior, the positive behavior, or we have to remove those inhibit behaviors from the minds of the trainer. So that beliefs and opinions may be towards the learning. That somebody may think that learning this is not going to be good for him, maybe good for the organization. And try to understand this. An employee, whenever he's being given training, it doesn't only think about the organization, he also thinks about himself, that how this knowledge is going to be beneficial to him, how he is going to develop himself, as well as then how it is going to develop the organization, benefit the organization. So his attitude towards learning will depend upon these factors. Towards his job performance, how this knowledge is going to really augment the organizational performance, his performance, which is ultimately going to contribute to the organizational performance. So his attitude toward that will, if his attitude is very positive, and he finds that the job performance is going to be improved drastically, then he'll be interested in, and his attitude will change. He'll have a very positive attitude towards that learning process or that training program. Understand it? And then towards the organization. Are you happy with the organization? The people, because as you understand, no organization can achieve its goal until unless the objectives of the organization and the objectives of the human beings, the people who are working in the organization, are connected with each other. They need to coincide with each other. So if people are also happy, the organization is also happy. If the organization needs are being met and the individual needs are also being met, then there is a win-win situation, and people things will develop. So if the employee need to have, what is his attitude towards the organization? If you think that organization is really thinking about him, organization is positive about him, this organization is going to develop his own career in this organization, he is going to be important in the organization, he is going to develop knowledge-wise, financially, and all other ways, is going to develop his life, then he will become more interested towards that. His attitude to the organization will change, and his contribution to the organization will change. So it's need to clarify those things in the minds of the trainee, in the form of training program, because sometimes there are hazy ideas. People do not understand that how they are going to be benefited by the organization. People think that they are being asked to work. They don't many times understand is not merely working for the organization, he is working for himself also. Because if he is doing something for the organization, he is also developing himself. These organizations are nothing but a what? It's a process through which you are developing yourself. It gives a platform for developing people. So those who are intelligent people take this opportunity of working in the organization to develop himself. So that's a part of that attitude. So that is needed to be given. So after this, we'll see now. This is our in between part. Although you have some questions asked, if anybody has got any question in between so far, then you are most welcome to ask tonight, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. Right? So please come out with your questions if you have got right now at this moment. No question? Now have a sip of water then.
So can you please go to that um, 8th slide? Eighth
Which
or might be ninth. But
this?
no, sir.
Tell me
That
something which is looking at.
structural, that structure, I cannot see the number. It's,
Okay,
I
okay.
guess, eighth one.
State one.
Eighth one. Eighth slide.
Mine. This one
That's
is
an
mine.
8th slide. Okay. Is that
So
this
that's
is
structural something before that.
okay? Is that
Yes, sir. So can you please elaborate it a bit?
which one? What point?
So this structure, like the flow,
Okay,
this whole
okay, okay.
flow.
Okay, okay. I told you that where did I start? If you remember, I started
The
with the fact.
formulating.
I started with the fact there is a need for training. And why there is a need for training? There is a need for training because there is some organizational expected organizational performance and there is an actual organizational performance. If there is a gap between the two, there is a gap, then there is a need for using training as a tool. And there becomes a necessity or the need for training in the organization. You as a person in the training department or in the HR department will certainly start understanding, and maybe by the advice of the executives or by the people and the managers in the various departments, that there is a gap, people do not understand certain things, there is a need for training. The moment you say there is a need for training, the question of managing the training process comes into it. And when you talk of managing the training process, the first thing starts as that needs analysis phase. That if there is a need for training, what kind of training is required, and that is to be analyzed in terms of its quality and quantity, what's required. That is the needs analysis phase. After the needs analysis phase, there is a design phase. That is the theoretical planning of, yes, if this is the need, then what we need to do, who is going to do, how it is going to be done, what objectives we want to achieve out of it, a theoretical blueprint of the entire process. And once the design phase is completed, now what is the process? Can you tell me the next process after the design phase? What is the process?
Development. Development.
Development phase. Yes, that is actually this subject what you're discussing is connected with that developmental phase. So this is the development phase. So the inputs of the development phase are the outputs of the design phase. Try to understand that. Inputs of the
Yes, sir.
development phase are the outputs of the design phase. And coming into this developmental phase, the first step will be the formulating the instructional strategy. In the instructional strategy will include all the materials that is required for a training process to happen. What materials will be required, what methods will be required, what modules will be required, what kind of trainer will be required, how, what are the facilities to be given to the trainees, and all those things. What are the environments will be given? Everything is to be seen in that instructional strategy.
Sir, why it is written alternative? Why not directly instructional methods? Because we have already studied about instructional things in a previous paper. So why alternative word is used here? That is like a bit
Alternate,
confusing.
see, you cannot say instructional methods only because it is not that if you have already started into instructional method doesn't mean that while making that instructional strategy, you will not think of the alternative. You will always think of the alternatives, isn't it so? You may have already planned, but even then you may have to think of the alternative. What may is more suitable, that's all, nothing else. I mean, what
Okay.
external methods are to be used. The alternative don't go up to this particular word. I mean, instructional methods are nothing fixed. It's always changing depending upon the requirement. So there may be alternative ways of doing it. What are the factors related to learning and facilitating and transfer? That facilitation and transfer. What methods will be good for that? What materials will be good for that? What process will be good for that? What facilities will be good for that? What kind of trainer will be good for that? That is what keeping in view our objective. And that objective is ultimately going to do what? Shaping the strategy of the organization. The strategy of the organization expected something from the HR, from the training, and that input will go to the strategy. That is what was desired. And when the strategy is shaped by the contribution of the training, the objectives are achieved in the organization. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is all step by step understanding. We started in some strategy. We incorporate the methods. We incorporate all factors. That factors we'll see. We are yet to see those factors, right? Materials and trainer and all that. We are yet to see that. Those factors are to be taken into account, and which will ultimately will shape the strategy and will ultimately help us to achieve the objectives. Right? Is
Right,
that
sir.
okay?
Right, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Anybody else? Any other question?
Sir,
Yeah.
Bhumi here. I just wanted to ask regarding the objective of the developmental phase. The last
Objective
thing
of the
in the same slide.
developmental phase.
Yes, in the same slide.
Coming to that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, 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 it's okay. No issue. Huh,
Yes, this one.
huh,
Regarding achieving the objective. So,
Achieve the objective. Yeah.
what
Huh.
specific objectives are we talking about over here?
Yes, yes. And I'm telling you. You see, we have seen in the design phase that we need to develop a training program for the executives. Right.
All right.
Executives. When you see that there is an executive's need for training, then we'll make an instructional strategy that what materials we'll give, what kind of trainer we'll use, where we are going to train them in a hotel somewhere, and what is there, right? All of the details, what materials we require to develop, what facilities they should get in their training point, wherever they are going to be trained, everything is decided, right? And then decide the method, the factor that is given, now everything is decided. And that's what going to give the strategy, in the sense whatever we have thought about, that is ultimately delivered, it's implemented, and now comes achieving the objective. Objective of developmental phase is what? Now we have made an instructional strategy that we require this kind of material. Fine. We require trainer's manual, we require trainee's manual. We require this kind of facility, but those were in theory. Now, ultimately, the objectives that are achieved mean now the training manual is prepared. That is one achieving of the objective. Ultimately, the equipment that is required, those are acquired and they're placed in that place. The training facility that we want to give, the venue and everything is ready. That is what achieving the objective of the developmental phase. Try to understand. Achieving,
Does it say that uh, while during that designing phase, whatever we have already jotted down on the paper,
yeah.
whatever we have finalized, am I audible to you, sir?
This is now, yeah. Whatever you have thought in the design phase, in the development phase, we have given a practical shape in our thoughts and then practical shape in the reality.
All right.
Yeah. Are you getting my point?
Yes.
In the design phase, we had a plan, thinking in our mind. In the developmental phase, we have tried to really do it and then try to really achieve it in reality. The plans, the training materials are developed, training manuals are developed, training process is defined, the venue is there, the trainers are ready, everything is ready now. Now the next phase will be what? Can you please tell me?
Yes. Executing,
Implementation phase.
implementation,
Yes,
execution.
that will be the implementation phase. So what you're talking about is the development and the implementation phase of entire managing training process. Okay.
All, all right.
Okay.
So before achievement,
Yeah.
it leads to achievement.
Yeah. It's
Leads to achievement.
of course it needs to achievement. It will need to achievement. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now let me go ahead. Now I think questions are over. I'll go forward. Yeah. Next. So now when we talk of instructional strategy, for making an instruction strategy, we have to keep in mind always the who are the target population, for whom we are doing this, because everything is generated out of that. If you're doing it for the top management people, the strategic people, executives, then our material will be different, the trainer will be different, the place will be different, the venue will be different, everything is different. And then what will be the training objective? Is it a casual objective or it is a very serious objective? I mean, we want to give our executives a change for some time, just a vacation and go into a particular place and have some change and have some relief from their day-to-day activities and for some days, the objective is different. But objective is maybe different, that there is some government regulation, very strict regulation which is to be followed with the organization, and there is involvement of the executives. Well, the objective is different, so the training program will be different. The location will be different depending upon the target population and depending upon the objective, the location where it's done. Because there may be various locations that you will see in this particular topics, you will see in a different session the locations, how we have to think about it. Then when we have got a location defined, these are all part of our instruction strategy. Try to understand it. Inputs in the instruction strategy. I mean, inputs means which is to be developed. The location is given, then what will be training space configuration. Training space is important thing. I mean, where we are going to give that, and the whole process of training is going to happen. The movement of the trainers, the movement of the trainees. I mean, the entire environment will be created, and that training space configuration is important. And then there comes out of that will emerge the the entire this training space configuration or the location or the training objective will be decided by the learning objective. Try to understand this. There are two different things: the training objective and the learning objective. Training objective is that they should learn, and the learning objective is this, that they should be able to perform certain things. If I want to perform certain things, I have to learn certain things. But I will learn those things only when I'm trained on that. So a training objective will ultimately help us in will be determined by the facts of the learning objective. And when the learning objective is also achieved, through what? We have to see the modules. That what kind of modules are required, what kind of compartments of knowledge is to be given to them step by step, logically sequenced and connected with each other, so that the ultimate learning objective is achieved. So it will depend upon instructional strategy, will depend upon the target population, the training objective, the location, the training space configuration, the learning objective, and then ultimately the modules. The instruction strategy, as I told you earlier, I'm repeating the same, all the elements of training program will be involved in that. That is, the individual modules will be seen, how those are to be developed, those are to be seen, how they're organized with each other. Organized means what? Again and again, this word is coming. I mean, you cannot give the modules in an unorganized manner, because if you give it more organized way, the training will be proper, the learning will happen. The learning is depending upon how organized the modules are. At times, it makes a mistake. Mistake becomes by any person who is delivering the modules, is that they is not connecting, organizing the modules in a proper sequence. But the human beings can logically understand certain things in a proper certain manner, and that is the organization and the timing involved in it. How much time is to given to what should came after what, and for how much time certain things have to be delivered. The methods that you're going to use, the materials that you're going to use, everything, as I said, is a part of this instructional strategy. The output of the developmental phase, as I told you earlier also, are all the things that is needed to deliver the training program to the participants. Because the output of the development phase is making it equipped with all those tools which you are going to use to implement the process, implement the training program. So what those tools are what? I mean, those materials require what? The training material, the trainer's manual, and the what do you call the training equipment that is required, the space and the place of the training, the trainer, and everything. These are all things, the output of the development phase, which is going to be deliver the training program to the participant, and as such is also input to the implementation process. After the delivery, the development process, there is implementation process. So for the implementation process, the outputs of the development process are the inputs. Well, I was telling you earlier the learning objective and the training objective. And as I said you that these two are two different things. The learning objective we have got in our mind that what after learning, what people are going to do, what we expect them to do. And again, I'm referring to the training objective. If we expect those things to do, get this kind of training, learning, then what kind of training is to be given? That is training objective. And then ultimately, learning objective will define that what is expected of those people. But then the learning objective will depend upon certain things. The learning object, depending upon that learning objective, you define our training methods, we'll define our materials and equipment, we will define our trainer. You want a certain kind of impact. To get particular knowledge, we require a particular kind of trainer, right? And then the actions which are taken to transfer the training to the job. Now, is something very important, something which is very important. I must say that you must keep it in your mind. One thing is giving the training, and the other thing is transfer of training. And the third thing, I also define the third thing, transfer of training to the job. So there are three things. Are you getting my point? Number one is the actions taken to give the training. One is the training, given the training. Actions taken to transfer the training. Transferring of the training is once it's a realistic process of training by which actually the knowledge and everything that is delivered that actually gets transferred to the people, means the process of the methods and the sequence and facilitation has been so good that people have really learned it. The transfer has taken place. The concept, the ideas, the skill, the attitude, and everything that was within the trainer has now gone inside the trainees. So the transfer of training has taken place. But the third thing which I am going to define, which many times becomes a very mistaken process in the organizations. The people are now trained, but that training or that learning is something which is temporary. Until and unless those learnings are going to be implemented or practiced in reality, those are going to be forgotten. So if there is a training which is given to the people, the transfer of training has taken place. Now this has to be, he should be engaged in that particular activity, and he should be allowed to do that activity further so that it can be reinforced within him. And the process of learning can be reinforced within him, and the ultimate objective is achieved. Are you getting the point? So the transfer of training to the job is the part of that learning objective also, that you ultimately want that is to be transferred. And to get that transferred, there will be different methods, there will be different kinds of training, there will be different kinds of materials and equipment, so that actually the training is transferred. And of course, on the next step is the evaluation process and time frame. That's there. That for every training that you're giving in the evaluation phase, you'll see have we done it correctly? If not, we have done what are the methods, things went wrong, what changes that you can make, and the time frame. Could you do it within the time frame that was already decided about? The time frame is to be ensured, and that's also a very important aspect of this. So the learning object. And after that, we will see now the instructional strategy. Again, as I told you earlier, instructional strategy is the most important aspect of this particular topics of this subject that you're dealing with. Central theme, instructional strategy. Everything will go around it. Now we'll see in instructional strategy what are some of the elements, so the most important elements. Instructional strategy, as I told you earlier, it's also known as a training plan. It's a written document, and that document includes methods, the materials, the equipment, the facilities, the trainers, and everything. And that's interesting because it includes everything: methods, materials, equipment, facilities, trainers, and all our sessions in this topics will go around this, right? So we'll in different sessions we'll see see these components, right? Well, now before that, so what will happen in our forthcoming sessions? We may talk of the materials that is required, the methods that you have already seen in some of your uh, chapters or in your classes, in sessions. Methods, training methodology, um, yeah, experiential methodology, and otherwise, both the things you have seen. We will see here the materials that is required. We'll have an elaborate session on that. We'll see the equipments needed. We'll see the facilities required. We'll see the trainers, what is to be done about the trainers and all that. So in different sessions, we'll see these things which are important. Now come the training budget. The training budget. Now it is something which is important. And when you talk of the training plan or the training strategy, one very realistic point is the training budget. Because whatever we want to do, whatever we want to achieve, there's a requirement or there is a financial requirement. Funds are required. If we talk of engaging people, trainer, we require funds. We talk of getting equipments and materials, we require funds. If you want to conduct a training program in hotel, we require the financial requirement. So there is a requirement of creating a training budget. So training budget is also an essential, very important part of the what do you call the instructional strategy. The training budget includes the direct and indirect costs required to analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate, and maintain the courses and materials over a period of year for smooth running of the training activity. To run that training activity, what kind of direct and indirect cost is required to get the entire process of analyzing, designing, developing, implementing, evaluating, and maintaining that course over a period of year. So generally we see that when you talk of the budget, it's generally done for a year for that particular training activity. Uh, what practically is done in the organizations, the different organizations, they may take different ways, but they are more or less the similar because before coming of the next session, the next financial year, a training budget is prepared that is estimating that what will be our requirement depending upon what kind of training programs we are going to conduct, and depending upon that, what kind of expenditure that we are going to incur. Uh, that is in terms of the equipment, the facilities, the trainers, and all that, and making an estimation of that. That's required, and those are generally what is done. Those estimated things are now budgeted things are get those are approved by the concerned authorities for the coming year, so that in the next year, whenever as and when it's required under different heads, one can use those expenses, one can make those incur those expenses, and those are already approved by them, right? A training budget includes the cost for training staff salary. Staff salary is also it may. It depends upon the organization that their policies, but it may also include the training of the staff salaries. Of course, the trainer's cost is already there, but staff salary is also sometimes is included in that. The appropriate learning facilities are part of that. The expenditure towards learning facilities is also included in that. The expenditure towards the learning materials also included. Training materials also included in that. Hardware and the cost of outside consultants, the hardware that is required, the cost of the outside consultant, that is also required to be included into that, right? So a training budget will include all these things, and that has to be done early, I mean pre-stage, so that one can make an understanding of what cost you're going to incur in the coming year in terms of the expenses towards different heads, and those are to be approved approved from the concerned authorities. Now, while preparing training budget, as I told you earlier, that in a training budget, how things happen that people will, uh, you can make an estimation of what kind of training program you are going to do. About doing those training programs, what kind of facilities that you require, which you may not have right now, and you may have to purchase certain equipment, certain materials. What will be the cost of that, right? So it will go through an entire process. The process is first is the training needs assessment. But you must make an assessment of the training need, that what will be the needs that is required. Will you please hold for a second, a minute, please? Just a minute. Yes, what I was talking about, that training needs assessment. That is the first step. That is, every year we will find out that what kind of training that you're going to do, because it is one thing is that training needs are the actual in general what kind of training we generally do. There is some special specific requirement of training from the organization for the maybe developing new areas of and areas of functioning in the organization, or there will be requirement for the government to get certain specific knowledge for some change in the process of the system, or the legal requirement and all that. So there is a need for training needs assessment at the beginning of the year. So you may find out that there may be some extra kind of training is required to be done to meet up with those requirements for the government agencies or for the organizational priorities and all that. And then for to achieve or meet those training needs, what kind of administration cost is required? What kind of cost to the consultants are required? The consultant, sometimes there may be the trainer from the within the organization, there may be some trainers from outside as a consultant with specific, highly skilled people, knowledgeable people for anything for which the organization doesn't have any expertise, or there are not people are not there in the organization in that area. So we may have to hire the consultant from outside. And we may have to now develop our trainers. To give a specific kind of training, we require to develop our trainers so that they can really render the trainings to the people to achieve the objectives of the organization. So there maybe we have to what kind of train the trainer programs we have to conduct, and for that, what are the costs will involve? What kind of coaching and mentoring is to be given to our people at different levels, wherever it's required, and what kind of cost we are going to incur towards that? What are the direct costs involved, or the indirect costs are involved, and all those cost considerations are to be seen. And those are the components of the entire training process. So we need to prepare a training budget, and that is a very, very practical aspects of a training process, because ultimately those are to be approved. If those are not approved, then you may not purchase the materials, you may not purchase the equipments at all. So if you think that you are going to increase your training process, expand your training process, and then you may have to increase your budget. It may be vice versa also. You may think that now we're going to reduce the training expenditures, and their activities will be reduced. So it may be either way. So, but that is to be decided beforehand, and those are to be made in black and white, written black and white, and we have to get those things approved from the authorities depending upon the particular organization's requirement, their own policies and procedures. And sometimes people make an one year full whole training program, training plan or training strategy, instruction strategy. Sometimes people make a 6 monthly instruction strategy or a training plan. So it can be either way. And then some of the direct costs, that just to give an example, travel expenses of the trainers, the trainees also. Sometimes the training programs are conducted outside the place where the trainers, the trainees are situated. So for that, the people may have to travel from outside. It may be through rail or by train or by air, and whatever is the expenses. The boarding and lodging for those people who are going to go outside. The cost of the faculty that you're going to hire to give the training. The facilities that you need to have, the LC projects that you need, the speakers that you need, the tables, chairs, and everything, any other equipment that's required. and that is banners and all that. All facilities are required. The audiovisual cost, anything towards the audio, the microphones, and any other visual things that you're going to use, the cost of that, the technology that you're going to use for that, even the everything that is required in a training process, the technology, the material that you require, everything, right from your marker to anything that you can think about in a training process, flip charts and all that, and those materials are required. The evaluation that you require to make for the training program sometimes that will cost will require. What foods and beverages that you're going to give to the people in terms of lunch, dinner, breakfast, or anything else that you want to give, and all those things that are the cost that is incurred, and that is going to be seen in the. So it will make it more realistic in understanding what kind of expenditure that it will make, and what are the areas we can reduce our expenditure, keeping in view the objectives of the training, and that is important for us. Well, the next is, in general, I'm just giving you one idea. Although there are different ways of looking at it, depending upon the policies and procedures of the organization. One very common way of doing the total yearly salary budget, and out of that, 1 to 3% of that is a training budget. So it depends upon how much importance the training is given in an organization. So I think just giving an example, certain organizations follow this process of the 1 to 3% of the total yearly salary budget. The salary that you're giving, 1 to 3% of that is given in the total training budget. That's an example, but it depends upon the policy and process of the organization. So it has to predetermine the training needs. It has to predetermine the estimated cost. It has to calculate those things, and as I told you, those are to be prepared in black and white, and those are to be ultimately presented to the competent authorities for approving those before the next year starts and the actual expenditure starts taking place. So with that, I come to the end of today's sessions, and we'll be elaborating on different areas of this topics on different areas in our different sessions, right? So, but out of this, so far, whatever I have said, if you have got any question, you are most welcome to ask me, and please, I'm waiting for your questions if you have got any. Thanks for listening to me very patiently. Yeah, please, Noah.
So would there be any further more detailed description on calculation on budgets in next classes?
Calculation of budget, actually, I've given it, but I'll give you one specimen of that. Right?
Okay, sir.
I'll give you one specimen of that, just to get a feel of it. Right?
Yes, sir. To be more precise, like what it is now.
I'll give you. I cannot give it on the very first day. Everything, no. I'll give it to them. Don't worry. Yeah, just remind me. That's all. Anything else? Any other question? Are you tired? I should be more tired than you. No question.
So the class was very clear and inclusive of all the facts, might be.
Okay. That's nice. But
Yes, sir. The class you have explained everything very clearly. So there are very few questions. And no, we're not tired. We have a long day. We have 4 lectures to attend.
Okay. But please, if later on also you come out with any of the queries comes into your mind, jot down, so that in the next session, before you start the next day's program, I'll ask for those questions if you have got any. Are you getting my point?
Surely. Yes.
That will be better. You should better jot down. Rather than thinking at that time, just jot down those questions. You will start with those questions, then you'll go to the next session, right? So I think with that, I should leave you so that you can get some rest for the next session. So thank you very much. All the best. God bless you. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good day.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Close it out to session.